if someone is moving abroad with their family on that immediate, close family dynamic, as not everyone goes through change in the same way. And that can feel like a lot. So I think just keeping it kind of starting as simple as possible, like as maybe as difficult as it may be, keeping that communication open with the family that they do move abroad with is really important because no one can really read their mind. And on a really basic level, like you just got there, I would say like setting up routines that are weaving in the familiar in a really unfamiliar place as quickly as possible.
Hi, friends. Welcome to the Aspire and Acquire podcast. I'm your host, Sandeep Suri. Join me for listening to some incredible stories about some of the best professionals from very diverse fields like combat flying, robotic surgery, dancing, tea farming, journalism, deep sea diving, and so on. These accomplished professionals are not just outstanding in their jobs, but also have unique stories to share with us. We have tried to make the show truly global by having these guests from different parts of the world. Moving to a new country is a life-changing adventure, filled with excitement of new beginnings and the promise of untold opportunities. But it also comes with its own set of challenges, adjusting to unfamiliar cultures, overcoming language barriers, and finding a sense of belonging in a foreign land. Immersing yourself in the culture and truly understanding the nuances of a new environment is key to not only surviving but thriving abroad. For expats, this journey often demands resilience, adaptability, and an openness to growth. It's not just about building a life that looks great on the outside, it's about creating one that feels fulfilling and authentic on the inside. And that's where today's guest comes in. Welcome to another episode of the Aspire and Inquire podcast. Today, we are thrilled to introduce Mary Martha Kipcak, a certified life coach and master NLP practitioner who specializes in helping expats navigate the emotional and cultural challenges of living abroad. With nearly a decade of first-hand experience as an American expat in Santiago, Chile, Mary Martha combines practical insights and personal understanding to empower individuals to create a life that feels as good as it looks, no matter where they are in the world. As the host of Your Best Life Abroad podcast, she has inspired countless expats to build resilience, find clarity, and embrace fulfilling lives overseas. Get ready to dive into her journey and discover how she's transforming challenges into opportunities for growth and connection. Hi, Mary Martha. Welcome to Aspire and Acquire.
Hello, thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure to have you on the show. Let's get started.
Awesome.
So, Mary Martha, can you tell us about your personal journey as an expat in Santiago, Chile? What drew you there, and what has kept you there for nearly a decade now?
Yeah, I what drew me to Chile specifically as a country was really after I graduated college, I was kind of looking at my future and felt like I could either, you know, do like a lot of my peers were doing and find a job and start a career path. But then I also had this desire to live somewhere really far from home, experience different cultures, and just kind of see more of the world. And I always wanted to learn Spanish. It was something that I was never really able to do in school because I wasn't that great at languages, or so I thought. And so I wanted to spend time abroad in a Spanish speaking country. And I chose Chile because I have a family friend who had studied abroad in Santiago and had lived here for a bit. And when she was coming back to the US, I graduated college and I just chatted with her about her experience. And it just seemed like a smart thing to do instead of going somewhere where I didn't know anyone. Her ex-boyfriend was here, he's Chilean at the time. So I thought, well, at least I'll have one person. And it kind of gave me a sense of comfort. So I would say like the desire was really to kind of be abroad and to live in a Spanish speaking place. And Chile I chose Chile just as a practical decision, I think. And I think what has kept me here, probably I met my husband who's Chilean in my second year in Chile.
Mhm.
And that really changed. I arrived to Chile when I was 24 and single. So really totally different experience and going through my 20s and now my 30s. Yeah, I think that really made a difference is having a serious relationship.
Yeah. And you never thought it's going to be risky or anything of that sort came to your mind?
To be honest, I was really scared. I was really, really, really scared and I felt really nervous. I think I had a lot of support from family and friends, and that was really important. Looking back, like no one really spoke to me or like kind of said something to be like, "Oh, it's going to be so hard," or you're not going to be able to handle it. Everyone was just excited for me. It was like, "You can do it." And I obviously had a lot of fear. I think because it's so like unknown. I think a lot of the fear came when I landed to Chile and I really like in the plane, I really realized like, oh, like I don't speak Spanish. Everyone here is speaking Spanish. I don't know anyone really. I don't have a job. I don't know where I'm going to live. So I would say the first year was really hard, but there was kind of a beauty in like the adventure. It was a double-edged sword, like equally exciting and equally scary, I would say.
Yeah. It can, I can completely agree with you. By the way, you have a very interesting niche, uh, Mary Martha, being an expert for expats. So, what inspired you to become a life coach and master NLP practitioner, especially focusing on expats?
Great question. I really didn't expect the process of living abroad to be so challenging. And I found like that although some people, like fellow expat and international friends, we would talk about it, there wasn't outside of maybe therapy, there wasn't like support around things that were more like future focused and more goal oriented. As in like therapy is a little bit more like healing and focusing on the past. And I kind of felt like, there's so many people that go through this struggling in silence of living a life that to their friends and family back home looks really cool and glamorous and like picture perfect. Like you're traveling, you're seeing the world, you're like experiencing what so many people want, but
Mm,
yet it can be really lonely. I think that it is in its essence like a really big change if we think about it. Like they say, like moving, changing jobs, having kids, getting married are all of like stressful things. So if we think about this and like just the like psychology aspect, like we're really turning our life upside down because the simplest things are now unfamiliar and being away from maybe a support network. It's like the first time I think I really figured out like who I was standing on my own 2 feet. And I think no matter how old someone is or no matter the life stage, that can be like a real shock to your system when it's really portrayed, I think a lot now, like on social media, as like the dream and something that will fix all your problems.
right.
So it kind of felt like, okay, there's some people who are silently struggling, who feel ashamed a little bit of hey, like my everyone thinks my life's amazing, but it's actually like it's not feeling amazing. I don't really feel at home, figuring out who I am, building this new social group, adjusting, making it work without having to go back home, or just figuring out this big change in their life. And I felt like it's important for me to kind of, after being here for so long and after going through all of that, to normalize it and to bring support to other people going through that and shine a light like, hey, like it's okay. Like a lot of people go through this. It's part of the experience. I guess similarly to how a lot of people now are talking about the difficulties of entrepreneurship instead of glamorizing all the time. And that could really open up this space to allow other people to process the hard parts and
Yeah.
make space for the great parts too, but be like, okay, it's just part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I've experienced expat life myself, and in my opinion, one of the
Mhm.
biggest challenges is navigating the cultural changes and uncharted territories. It can be particularly unsettling, in my view, for the family as they try to adapt, right? So, from your perspective, what are some key strategies or mindset shifts that can help expats and their families feel more grounded and at home in a new country?
Yeah, great point. So true. I think that's really a good point that you bring up. There can be a lot of strain if someone is moving abroad with their family on that immediate, close family dynamic, as not everyone goes through change in the same way. And that can feel like a lot. So I think just keeping it kind of starting as simple as possible, like as maybe as difficult as it may be, keeping that communication open with the family that they do move abroad with is really important because no one can really read their mind. And on a really basic level, like you just got there, I would say like setting up routines that are weaving in the familiar in a really unfamiliar place as quickly as possible. Obviously, over time, exactly like you said, like there's just so much, it's so new. And so I think it can be overwhelming once someone, an expat, understands, like, oh, this is might be a long road to learning this culture, this language, and feeling comfortable here. So kind of having these things to hold on to that like an easy win while you are going out there and like building the process, building this new life and going through the ups and downs. It is going to take time, consistent effort, I think, as well, of like this flexibility, which culturally we can not even understand. Maybe that could be a mindset of there's no right or wrong or better or worse. There's just different.
Yep.
And just hold that space for like, hey, like I wouldn't do it this way, but they do it this way. Like you don't have to like everything, but subconsciously or maybe without meaning to, sometimes we can feel that our culture is better. And that is a mindset that can be tricky because that can just like put off an energy of that's not the best for building a social life or adapting to work. So that it's just different over better or worse, I think, is important. And everyone giving themselves lots of grace, setting up routines, some sort of stability, even if it's just like an hour or 30 minutes in their day in the beginning, and communicating, I would say right away with their if they move around with family, just even having one person, because the more that the challenges are internalized without sharing them, it's like it builds into shame. And that gets to be like a vicious cycle of an inner dialogue that might not be so helpful.
Mhm.
So, as quickly as possible, like being vocal about, even though it's really uncomfortable and you have to be a little bit vulnerable, sharing that with someone that they trust.
Yeah. I want to switch gears now, Mary Martha, and talk about neuro linguistic programming. How does being a certified NLP practitioner help you support clients in navigating these challenges?
It's interesting because what the neurolinguistic programming is basically just like understanding the way our brain works, and everyone has a primary way of understanding and processing information, whether it be visual, audio, or kinesthetic, like those feelings. So that's really what the neurolinguistic programming is. And so the difference in like traditional coaching is that, as like that powerful questioning, being able to have these insights and kind of support someone in their goals. And the neurolinguistic programming like takes it a step farther to have kind of an internal shift like in their mind. Like, for example, I'm a really visual person. So for me, if I feel really nervous or anxious about something, I'm going to have this visual in my mind of it going like horribly. And so there are certain techniques, let's say if like a client is having difficulty with like putting themselves out there socially or
Mhm.
adapting, and it's like their mind is just filled with it going wrong and it creates a ton of anxiety in their body, we can flip that. We can like play around with these that like vision that's coming up in their mind and all of these things that we can play around with so that it kind of calms that anxiety and it helps them understand how their mind works, which is kind of taking it a little bit of a step further than all the other coaching process, that people can understand how their mind works, how they process information in a way that they can like then work for them instead of feeling like their mind is just kind of rocking them around with either a voice that's very unkind, or the feelings that feel like, oh, I can't control this, or an image in my mind of things going terribly wrong. There's so many little things that we can do to
Mhm.
take control of that, and I think that that is like a really exciting and empowering thing to witness someone be like, oh, I can understand the way my mind works and kind of influence some change here.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Can you share a memorable success story from your coaching practice that highlights the transformation expats can experience?
Sure, yeah. I think, you know, something that like in like a day-to-day kind of example with
Mhm.
a past client is sometimes there can be a lot of frustration with like cultural differences at work or within friendships and relationships. And an example is like with like these NLP practices, we can really like go outside of kind of our normal thinking and really see it deeper from the other person's perspective.
Mhm.
And this creates like a deeper level of empathy than we normally experience, which really allows for people to see things like in their daily experiences as different culturally instead of better. And in their day to day, have more harmonious relationships with their bosses, with their friends, with their family, and adapt better like in that moment. And I think in those moments, choose just like a way to respond that is from like their wiser self instead of emotionally reacting, which can feel really empowering and just noticing these shifts and less tension in their day-to-day lives.
Yeah. Okay. We've been talking about cultural differences and learning from the culture, right? So, how important is it for expats to deeply understand and embrace the culture of the host country?
I think it's important to understand something that's really unfamiliar, and respect is important as well. I like that I like that word respect because it's not necessary to love everything or say I will, you know, abandon my own culture to just adopt this. It's also, I think, like in any relationship, respect is important and understanding is important, even though with other friends and family or marriage, we might do things differently. And so I think intercultural relationships are a part of being an expat and living abroad. It's can't really go about it. I think that understanding comes with that curiosity and just saying like I'm just going to learn about this culture and just learn about it so I can understand it and embracing it. I think it depends really also, to be honest, like how different is the culture,
Yeah.
because there's levels of this, we live in a big world and there's very different we have cultures that are very different from one another. So sometimes for some people, it might be too much of a stretch to embrace, but to respect, to allow it to exist along with theirs, I think is a good first step, depending. And obviously, it would be amazing if everyone could embrace, but sometimes that might be too big of a shift, depending on the cultural difference and how long someone has been abroad and their reasonings for going abroad. There's expat spouses who go abroad with their spouse, and to keep the family together and maybe cannot work while they're living abroad. And then there's people like myself who go, it was my decision. So I think that there's a lot of things at play to just really respect that everyone moves abroad with different circumstances that could influence maybe the way how their path to embracing a new culture.
Yeah. And I believe initially it is definitely overwhelming as you're stepping out of your comfort zone, right? So as you settle down a little bit in the new country, then it'll be fine. But initial 100 odd days, would be very, very discomforting to some people.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. What practical steps can someone take to have a truly immersive experience in a foreign land?
I think the first step is not waiting until maybe they have like I think something that can kind of happen is there can be some a little bit of perfectionism, especially if someone moves abroad further into adulthood, really maybe more established in their career. And there's these areas like language or these other areas that they're not culture they're not as comfortable with to actually take the practical steps to meet other people, to embrace with the locals, to just like kind of meet themselves where they are. So I would say like have that in mind and just start where someone is. And there's, a lot of Facebook groups. There's expat Facebook groups, there's internations, there's meetups. And I would just like for that, like the technology side, like jump in and just start going before they feel ready. And I think in that aspect, like creating kind of this like social community that a lot of expats sometimes struggle with deeper connections and friendships because they come from having that group of deeper connections built over decades, maybe in their home country is consistency. I think like with any other long-term goal, it's about just showing up and making the effort. So even a practical step is not being flaky, like, committing to their word, like going out of their way to set up these coffee dates and just going, even if they don't feel like it.
Yeah. And I guess the other thing expats face is to maintain a balance in um, continuing with their own cultural identity while adapting to a new one. How do you intend advising expats on this front? Because there is a dilemma for them. I lose my own identity in terms of managing my own culture, whereas on the other side, I also need to learn about the new culture.
Mm. I guess like it's more of a question, like why it's interesting, like I guess I haven't seen it that way, as in like I've actually felt more connected sometimes to like my culture and just things that my family does differently, recipes that cook, ways that we approach things, being so far from home. And so I guess it would be kind of maybe like doing a journaling practice or a self-reflecting, like just asking yourself, why do I feel like what is happening to make me feel that the more I learn about this other culture, that that takes away from my cultural identity? And how can I reframe this to see this as learning about another culture and respecting and like kind of admiring and having a new appreciation for my own culture? Now that it's like, I think that there comes like a deeper cultural appreciation once someone leaves their culture. Because then they could really see how the things that they actually really appreciate about their culture that they hadn't really thought about because they might have taken for granted. Um, so I think that, yeah, like learning about another culture and allowing yourself to hold on to your cultural identity and also setting boundaries, like where if this new culture that I'm in has this attitude that forces me to assimilate, what boundaries are important to me and how am I going to, stick to the culture, my own culture, while learning about them. And I think that can be a difficult one, but I guess it's a very personal journey and each person can feel conflicted at different parts. And that's where something like journaling or self-reflecting activity or coaching to really explore like what's underneath all of that can be really helpful instead of just sitting on the surface.
Absolutely. I also felt most of the time when I was leading an expat life, Mary Martha, that resilience is often a key theme in the expat journey. What strategies do you recommend for building this trait?
Mm, so true. Unfortunately, resilience usually comes through adversity, and adversity isn't very comfortable.
Yeah.
So, so I think that the answer might not be a fun one because if we really think about the times where we have become more resilient or built resilient, they've been some of the most challenging times. And I think when those times when we're becoming resilient, we don't feel like we're growing. It actually feels like we just can't get it right, or why is this not going my way? So I think a strategy is one that I find really helpful for me as I still pursue new goals and I'm still sometimes go through these challenges of living abroad is adopting a growth mindset for me has been really helpful and which I advise to my clients because the difference in a fixed mindset, like kind of just I need to like if I'm not good at this, then if this doesn't happen quickly, if I'm not good at this and I can't do it. And I think it can really lead to more suffering in that period of adversity or difficulty where that resilience is being built. And so adopting a growth mindset
Mhm.
of like I can try my best, I can learn, growing is good, it's okay to be uncomfortable, it's okay to feel anxious. I think that can be really helpful. And just allowing another one is allowing the word and to be there. Like I am, trying my best and I'm having a really hard day instead of it being either or, like both can exist at the same time. You can love this opportunity to move abroad, to live abroad, to be an expat, to have this international experience and feel really sad or feel like, oh, this is harder than I thought and I don't like this right now. Both can be true. And it's not necessarily like something that really happens overnight, which can be really tough with these types of changes that just requires like these small changes over time. Um, but obviously, I've used the experience too. I think it does end up paying off when that resilience is now there, and you have that skill for life. It just to become resilient takes going through adversity
Yeah.
and keeping up and continuing and it sounds really great, like growth mindset and all that stuff. But in the moment, it's okay if the person isn't feeling it. Like that's pretty normal.
Yeah. I really like the way you put it across the and strategy. That's a nice one
Mhm.
to kind of think about it. That it's not either or. Yeah, it can be both, right? So interesting.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the expat community now. What role does expat community play in helping expats feel at home anywhere they go?
Yeah, I think it plays a really important role because there's a reason why so many expats befriend other expats is because they have a similar experience and there can become this. It's really interesting, despite coming from different places of the world, there's so much that is shared. And that can create this really special, like family away from family. So befriending other expats and going out there and trying to get to know them is really important and building that community um, is important. And at the same time, in the long haul, or depending how long someone's going to be abroad, adapting and getting out there and trying to make friends with the locals is also a really important part. I think expat community is so important. And sometimes it can turn into like an expat bubble where it can become a limitation to learning the
Yeah.
language and culture, and it can become isolating a little bit. So I think it's really, really important. And it's also important to not like be careful of it becoming a limitation or like a crutch. It's not necessarily that you need to move abroad and only be friends with the locals. Like I think there's a place for both friendships. It's just it can become a little bit of a limitation. If it limits from learning about the culture, exploring, settling in. and learning the language.
Yeah. Okay, I want to switch gears and talk about your podcast, which is the
Mm,
the Your Best Life Abroad. That's the title of the
yeah.
podcast series, right? So, what led you to start your Best Life Abroad podcast? How has it evolved since its inception?
I took a little bit of break, so I'm relaunching in February.
Hmm.
And I what led me to do it is, starting with, social media content and Instagram and LinkedIn. I really enjoy it. I like the short form content, but I found that it's kind of hard to dig into some deeper topics because, it's a short form content. And before just getting into coaching, I did copywriting and I love blog writing. So I love going deeper into things. So that was kind of the inspiration towards just having a place where I can go a little deeper into these topics. And some people just really don't enjoy being on Instagram as much and kind of want another place to connect and engage without it being having to be on Instagram all the time. And also something that for the relaunch I'm excited about is just integrating more interviews with other people who are living abroad and having it be a focus and just the kind of what I was talking about before, just normalizing a lot of these things that people kind of silently go through abroad so that people can be like, feel a little bit of relief, like, oh, I'm not the only one.
Yeah. To be honest, I tuned into this morning, the last episode that you had when you were questioning everything. That is the title. And it's
Mm-hmm.
interesting. Yeah. I mean, I really like the format. It's short and crisp, just 5 to 7 minutes, right? So that's
Thank you.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. If someone is considering moving abroad, what is the one piece of advice from your podcast you believe they should hear first?
I think the one piece would be it's important to understand that when you want to move abroad, you are very much in a practical mindset of like, how do I get a job? How can I change with the company I'm working for? Get a visa? How's my family going to move abroad with me? Where am I going to live? And that is absolutely understandable. Like, you need to have that figured out to actually move abroad. But I would like and just let them know. I guess my advice would be I would advise that their strategy, their planning, their investment into this change doesn't stop there. It doesn't start and end with all of those things. And that would be like, that's the biggest mistake that I think a lot of people make, and which actually sets themselves up for more prolonged struggle once they are abroad because it feels like, oh, I just need that to do that. And I would invite them to look at it as if someone was starting a business. And if the only thing that they needed to start a business, the only thing was to have a business idea and to have a business plan. And that would be it. Like, okay, I need to get these things, I have my business name and get it registered. And then once I do that, I will have a successful business. We know that they also need to go through a personal transformation, that they need to do a
Mhm.
lot of things they've never done before to start that business. So, kind of the thing about moving abroad, it's quite similar as what, like before you're moving abroad, do all the practical stuff. And then also, I think that there needs to be a more support because it takes much more to live the type of life that they most likely want to live abroad, a better quality of life, a fulfilling life, a life fulfilled by their values, better professional opportunities, the travel, to have these experiences. That requires more than just getting there. And I know that this might not be the best thing for them to hear, but I think it's important to just like educate a little bit about part two, once you get there and then getting settled and building a life there.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Mary Martha, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Your insights and experiences have truly shed light on the unique challenges and opportunities of expat life. Thank you for sharing such practical advice and inspiring us to embrace change.
Thank you so much. It was a great time.
Build resilience and create fulfilling lives wherever we may be. For our listeners, if you're navigating the complexities of living abroad or simply want to learn more about how to thrive in new environments, be sure to check out Mary Martha's podcast, Your Best Life Abroad. Thank you all for tuning in to this episode of Aspire and Acquire. Until next time, keep growing, keep exploring, and keep aspiring for more. Thank you. In our bonus section, we feature a handy guide called The Expert Expat by Melissa Breer Hess and Patricia Lindemann. Practical, insightful, and drawn from real world experience. This book is a must have for anyone navigating the expat life. It offers thoughtful advice on planning ahead, sorting out your vaccinations, keeping your passport within easy reach, and simply stepping out into the world. Oh, and a tip straight from the authors. Don't forget to pack this book. You just might need it for re entry. Enjoy the read and the adventure that comes with it. Happy reading.